Three poor children found $10, and with that small amount of money, they did something that made the whole town scream in amazement. Dawn had not yet fully broken when Emily left the house, dragging her suitcase forcefully along the dirt road. Her face, hardened by anger, barely showed emotion as her children watched from the doorway. 11-year-old Lily clung to the doorframe, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mama, where are you going?" "Please don't leave us," she pleaded, her trembling voice barely audible in the cold morning air. Ivan, her 7-year-old brother, stood beside her, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. But Emily continued walking, her gaze fixed ahead, as if those words never reached her ears. The woman's footsteps echoed with a coldness that filled the air. There was no love in her stride, only an icy, impenetrable firmness. Each time Lily tried to take a step to reach her, fear paralyzed her. She knew, deep in her heart, that there was nothing she could say to stop her. "If you don't shut up and stop bothering me, you're going to regret it," her mother had said the night before, with a harshness that Lily would never forget. Now, that threat hung in the air, colder than the dawn itself. The wind blew softly, but inside the girl's chest, a hurricane of despair raged. Emily walked without looking back, without stopping for a second to think about what she was leaving behind. She was headed towards a destination that, in her mind, offered the freedom she so desperately craved. The man she had decided to leave with was waiting for her at the edge of town, a man whose presence had always been a source of conflict in their home. He was the promise of a different life, far from the grueling routine and responsibilities that suffocated her. For Emily, freedom meant breaking with everything, even the bonds of blood that tied her to her children. Lily stood there, rooted to the threshold of the house, her soul shattered. She didn't understand why her mother was abandoning them, but the emptiness that began to grow inside her was so immense that it threatened to consume her. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Ivan, seeing his sister cry, began to sob as well. His small voice was an echo of the pain they both shared. "Why is she leaving, Lily?" "When is she coming back?" the boy asked, but Lily had no answers. She just wrapped him in an embrace, seeking solace in the warmth of her younger brother, even though her own heart was filled only with cold. That night, the house was shrouded in silence, a silence that was heavy, painful. Lily couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, the sound of the door slamming shut reverberated in her mind. "Mama isn't coming back," she thought in the darkness. Fear kept her awake, her eyes wide open, terrified that if she fell asleep, her mother might return, enraged and ready to punish her for something she didn't even understand. But deep in her heart, she knew that her mother wouldn't be coming back. That last look her mother had given her, that cold, distant stare, was a clear sign that her life had changed forever. The sun had not yet fully risen when Lily got up, feeling the weight of a sleepless night on her thin shoulders. Ivan was still asleep, tangled in an old blanket that barely shielded him from the morning chill. Her stomach growled, reminding her that the little piece of stale bread she had given her brother the night before was gone. There was no more food, not even a crumb. Lily stood for a moment, looking around the empty house, dusty and silent. The walls, which had once echoed with her mother's laughter, now held only the memory of her distant footsteps. With a heavy sigh, Lily made the decision to go out and look for something, anything to feed Ivan. She put on her old shoes, which were already too big for her, and slipped out the door, careful not to wake her little brother. The morning air bit at her skin, but she had no choice. She couldn't let Ivan suffer any longer. The streets of the town were still deserted. She walked slowly, hands tucked in her pockets, observing the closed businesses and the houses that still seemed to be slumbering. Hunger gnawed at her insides, but what pained her most was the fear of finding nothing. She had heard that some neighbors left their unwanted food outside their houses in cardboard boxes or plastic bags. Shame burning in her chest, Lily decided that this would be her only option. She headed towards the outskirts of town, where people lived with a little more affluence. As she walked, her eyes scanned for any sign of food. Occasionally she would spot a crust of bread on the ground, a bitten piece of fruit, but nothing that could satisfy Ivan's hunger, let alone her own. Desperation gnawed at her, and she felt her stomach clench tighter with every step. Her legs ached, but she didn't stop. She had to find something. Finally, behind a bakery, she found a cardboard box, half open, containing several pieces of stale bread and some unsold pastries. Without thinking twice, she rushed over and began gathering the largest pieces, stuffing them into her jacket pockets. Her heart raced, as if she were doing something forbidden, but the need was stronger than the shame. "What are you doing there, girl?" The voice of an older man startled her. Lily froze, fearing the worst. She turned her head slowly and saw the baker, a stout man with a serious face, staring at her from the doorway of his shop. Lily swallowed hard, unable to speak. The man observed her for a few seconds, then gestured with his hand. "Take it. It's no use to anyone here." Still afraid, Lily nodded silently and ran off before the man could change his mind. As she clutched the pieces of bread in her pockets, a wave of relief and shame washed over her. She felt small, as if everyone knew what she had just done. But Ivan's face flashed in her mind, and with it, the realization that it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was that she now had something to feed him. When she returned to the house, Ivan was awake, rubbing his eyes with his small hands. "I'm hungry, Lily," he mumbled. Eliana smiled faintly and went to him, pulling the pieces of bread from her pockets. "I found this, Arturito. It's not much, but it's all we have for today." Ivan, without asking questions, took the bread with his small hands and began to eat, his gaze fixed on his sister. Watching him, Eliana felt the weight of responsibility settle on her more heavily than ever. She promised herself that she would keep looking, that she would never let Ivan go hungry, no matter what she had to do. Days later, as Eliana walked through town again, she saw Doña Belén, a long-time neighbor, watching her curiously from her doorway. She was an older woman, with weathered hands and a firm gaze, but her heart had always been generous. However, at that moment, Eliana could not imagine that this woman would become her salvation. Belén had noticed Patricia's absence for days. She knew something was wrong, but she hadn't wanted to pry. However, seeing Eliana wandering the streets alone, her face gaunt and her body thin as a shadow, made her decide to act. "That poor girl is going through something terrible," she thought. One day, as Lily was returning from her daily search for food, Victoria called out to her from her doorway, "Child, come here." Startled, Lily stopped in her tracks. She didn't want to talk to anyone. The shame of being seen as an abandoned child consumed her, but Victoria's tone held no judgment, only concern. Slowly, she approached. "Where is your mother?" Victoria asked, her voice gentle yet firm. Lily, unable to contain herself any longer, lowered her head and let the tears flow. "She's not here anymore," she whispered between sobs. Victoria looked at her with eyes full of tenderness, but also with concern. She knew, deep down, that Lily and Ivan's situation was much more serious than she had imagined. As the girl's tears fell unchecked, Victoria put her arm around Lily, drawing her close in an embrace filled with the warmth of a mother who understood her pain, for she herself had experienced something similar years ago. "It's okay, child. It's okay," Victoria murmured, stroking Lily's hair. "You don't have to go through this alone. We'll find a way to get through this, okay?" Feeling for the first time in days the comfort of someone who cared, Lily couldn't hold back her tears. The shame and fear seemed to dissipate, if only for a moment, as she allowed herself to be consoled by Victoria. It was an embrace she had longed for since her mother left, an embrace that reminded her that, despite everything, there was still goodness in the world. As time passed, Victoria not only offered Lily and Ivan shelter, but also a home in the truest sense of the word. Although they lived in a small house on the edge of town, with few amenities, Victoria made sure they lacked nothing essential. Every morning she woke before dawn to prepare breakfast, always leaving a little extra for Lily, who also started waking early to care for Ivan. Lily had unknowingly taken on the role of a little mother. She made sure Ivan brushed his teeth, got dressed for school, and didn't forget his notebook or pencils. At only 12 years old, the weight of responsibility had fallen on her shoulders, but Lily never complained. On the contrary, she found in that routine a purpose that kept her going. She felt that every act, every small effort to keep her brother safe and cared for, was her way of proving that, despite everything, they could still move forward. But the fatigue was inevitable. Victoria noticed it in Lily's eyes, in the way the girl would fall asleep at the table after dinner, or how her small hands trembled as she did her homework. Despite everything, Lily refused to let Ivan see how much it cost her to keep going. She always offered him a smile when he looked at her with worry. "Lily, you have to rest more," Victoria would tell her as they washed the dishes one afternoon. "You can't carry all this by yourself." "I know, Doña Victoria, but I don't want Ivan to feel alone. He needs me." Victoria looked at her with admiration, but also with sadness. The girl was so strong, so determined, but also so young. It was unfair that she had to endure so much at such a tender age. But Victoria knew that the circumstances of life sometimes left no other choice. So, instead of insisting, she decided to support her in any way she could, becoming the pillar that Lily and Ivan needed. Ivan, though still young, was beginning to understand what was happening. He noticed his mother's absence, though he didn't mention it, and he saw how hard Lily worked to take care of him. Between the three of them, Lily, Ivan, and Victoria, they began to form a small family, united not by blood, but by the love and solidarity that kept them afloat. And alongside them, there was Isidro, Victoria's son, who joined this new family unit. Isidro, a 13-year-old boy, was quiet but kind. He was always willing to help Lily and Ivan, whether it was sharing his school supplies or accompanying them on errands. Slowly, he became an older brother figure to Ivan and a close friend to Lily. The three often spent their afternoons doing their homework together, helping each other solve math problems or memorize history lessons. Over time, Lily, Ivan, and Isidro formed an unbreakable bond. They didn't have luxuries or comforts, but among them existed a deep understanding and support that helped them face each day with courage. Victoria, seeing how the three children complemented each other, felt that, despite the difficulties, there was hope in this small home she had built for them. Every morning, Lily woke up before the sun, making sure everything was ready for the day. She prepared breakfast, often a simple tortilla with beans, but she did it with love. Ivan watched her in silence, understanding more than Lily realized. He knew his sister did everything for him, and though he was still small, he vowed in his heart that when he was older, he would take care of her in the same way. Victoria made sure the three children had a space in her house, not just to eat and sleep, but to grow. She instilled in them values of respect, hard work, and honesty, and always reminded them that although life could be hard, they should never lose faith in a better future. One morning, as she walked home from school, Lily noticed something unusual on the ground. Something glinted in the sunlight, something small, but it caught her eye among the stones of the road. She bent down slowly, curious and cautious, and as she reached out, her trembling fingers touched what appeared to be a crumpled bill. As she unfolded it, her eyes widened. $10. It was an unimaginable amount of money for her and Ivan, two children who barely managed to survive on the little that Victoria could offer. Lily stared at the bill in disbelief, almost as if it were a treasure found by chance. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for a moment she thought of all the things she could do with that money. Buy food for several days, maybe new clothes, or even some books for school. But then a bolder thought crossed her mind. She tucked the bill into her pocket, thinking about what she would tell Ivan and Isidro when she got home. She felt a strange mix of responsibility and excitement, as if that bill held the key to changing their destiny. Upon arriving home, Ivan and Isidro greeted her at the door, ready to play, but Lily called them to a secluded corner, her expression serious. "Look what I found," she said, taking the bill from her pocket and showing it to them. Ivan's eyes widened in amazement, and Isidro was silent for a moment, trying to process what he was seeing. "That's a lot of money," Ivan exclaimed as his sister carefully folded the bill. "Yes, it is," Lily replied, "but we have to use it wisely. We can't spend it on things we don't need. I've been thinking, and maybe we could buy some newspapers to sell. If we sell them well, we could make even more money." The three children were silent for a few seconds, considering the idea. Isidro was the first to agree, his mind always practical and focused on the future. "It's a good idea, Lily, but it's not going to be easy. People don't always buy newspapers, and sometimes they look at us like we're worthless." Lily knew he was right. On more than one occasion she had felt the weight of those scornful looks, from people who looked at them with pity or disdain. They were the poor children of the town, the ones who lived on Victoria's charity. But she also knew they couldn't continue depending on others forever. They had to find a way to survive on their own. "I know," she finally said, "but we have to try. If it doesn't work, we'll find something else. But we can't just sit here waiting for someone else to help us." That same afternoon, Lily, Ivan, and Isidro went to the town center and bought their first batch of newspapers. They used almost all of the money on the newspapers, leaving only a small amount for emergencies. When they had the newspapers in their hands, the reality of the challenge became clearer. No one guaranteed they would sell them, and the fear of failure began to creep onto Ivan's face. But Lily, with the determination she had cultivated through years of adversity, refused to let fear paralyze her. The first few days were not easy. They stood on the busiest corners, offering the newspapers to passers-by, but many ignored them, or worse, looked at them with contempt. Some even told them they should be in school or at home, instead of bothering people on the streets. But Lily refused to be defeated. Each day she returned with a new strategy, a new idea to improve sales. Isidro, with his knack for talking to adults, soon found a way to attract buyers. He began to memorize the day's most important headlines and repeat them with enthusiasm, as if he were a little journalist in the making. Ivan, meanwhile, was in charge of carrying the newspapers, quickly delivering them to those who bought them. Little by little, sales began to improve, and although they didn't earn large sums of money, each sale gave them a glimmer of hope. Victoria watched them from a distance, her heart sometimes in her throat, as she saw them face so many difficulties at such a young age. She knew life hadn't been fair to them, but at the same time, She felt immense admiration for their perseverance. Every time they returned home with a couple more pesos in their pockets, Lily would smile with pride, and Victoria couldn't help but feel deep satisfaction seeing them face life with such courage. "I'm so proud of you," she told them one night as they sat down to dinner. "What you're doing isn't easy, but you're proving that, with effort, anything is possible." 5 years had passed since the day Lily, Ivan, and Isidro started selling newspapers on the street corners. What had begun as a small idea driven by necessity had become something much bigger than they could have ever imagined. Day after day, with the sweat of their brows and the unwavering determination in their hearts, they had managed not only to stay afloat, but to thrive. The 3 children, no longer so little, had carefully saved a portion of their earnings from selling newspapers. Despite the difficulties, they did not spend on unnecessary things. Every peso counted, and they treated it with the respect it deserved. And so, after several years of ceaseless effort, they finally had enough to take the next step: open their own newsstand. The day they finally put up the small sign above their stand, a modest Lily and Ivan's newsstand, was a proud day. It was more than just a business to the 3 of them. It was the culmination of years of sacrifice, of long days under the sun, and cold nights where they could barely rest. Seeing the newsstand, with its simple but bright colors, they felt a wave of relief and satisfaction. They had done it. Against all odds, they were now owners of their own space, a place from which they could offer not only newspapers, but also magazines, sweets, and other small items the townspeople often sought. Their business began to grow steadily. Customers who had once viewed them with suspicion now sought them out to buy the day's paper or to chat for a bit. Lily, with her natural ability to understand the needs of others, took charge of serving the more demanding customers, always with a smile. Isidro, who had developed an incredible head for numbers, kept the accounts and ensured everything was in order. And Ivan, now a young man of 16, was in charge of deliveries and keeping the newsstand in good condition. Together, they were an unstoppable team. The success of the newsstand not only brought financial stability for the 3, but also allowed them something they had long awaited: the opportunity to give back to Victoria a little of what she had given them. Victoria, with her immense generosity and heart, had never expected anything in return for the years of support and care she had given them. But Lily, Ivan, and Isidro knew that, without her, none of their achievements would have been possible. One afternoon, after closing the newsstand, Lily and Ivan approached Victoria as she sat on her rocking chair, enjoying the gentle breeze that swept through the patio. Lily carried a small bag in her hands, and Ivan followed close behind, nervous but determined. "Doña Victoria," Lily began, her voice soft yet firm, "we've been thinking about everything you've done for us over the years. Without you, we wouldn't be where we are today. And that's why Ivan and I have decided to share a portion of our earnings with you. It's the least we can do." Victoria looked up, surprised. "What are you saying, child? I did nothing that any decent person wouldn't do. You achieved all of this through your own efforts." "But you gave us a home," Ivan interjected, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave us food, love, and above all, hope, when we needed it most." Visibly moved, Victoria shook her head as her eyes welled up. "You don't have to do this, my children. My greatest reward is to see you well, to see you thrive as you have." "However," Lily insisted, holding out the bag with the savings they had set aside for her, "it's a way of thanking you. It's not much, but we want you to accept it." With trembling hands, Victoria took the bag and clutched it to her chest. "Thank you, my children." You will always be like children to me. And it brings me joy to know that what we have built together is much more than a simple home. It's a family. The days that followed were filled with the same dedication and hard work. But the spirit of gratitude and the bond between them only grew stronger. However, Lily, with her ever-inquisitive and visionary mind, noticed something that few others did: the increasing demand for newspapers. Gradually, the townspeople, and those in neighboring towns, were asking for more copies, and their deliveries were sometimes falling short. One afternoon, as they organized the new orders, Lily gathered Isidro and Ivan in the small room behind the newsstand. "I've been thinking," Lily began, gesturing towards the stacks of newspapers that barely fit in the cramped space. "Business is growing. But if we really want to take the next step, we need something bigger, something more stable." Ivan frowned, not fully understanding. "Bigger? How? Open another newsstand?" Lily smiled, a spark of a clear idea in her eyes. "No, something better. I've noticed that the demand for newspapers is increasing every week, and if we continue to depend on our current suppliers, we'll never be able to fulfill all the orders. We need to print our own newspapers. A small printing press." Isidro, who always analyzed ideas carefully, leaned forward. "A printing press? That sounds ambitious, Lily. How do you think we can achieve that?" "We can ask for a loan," Lily explained with the same determined tone that had brought them to where they were. "Victoria can help us with the paperwork, and with the money we've saved over the years, we have a solid foundation. If we do it right, we could not only sell more newspapers, but also create jobs for people in town." The days that followed Lily's proposal were filled with planning and hushed conversations. Although the idea of opening a printing press sounded promising, the reality of what it entailed was not easy to ignore. Asking for a loan meant taking a risk, but it was also a unique opportunity for growth, one they couldn't let pass them by. One evening, the three of them, Lily, Ivan, and Isidro, sat at the kitchen table with Victoria. The small room, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, was filled with the soft clinking of coffee cups and the aroma of freshly baked bread. Victoria listened attentively as Lily laid out her plan, a notebook filled with calculations and notes spread out on the table. "It's a risk, yes," Victoria finally said after a long silence, "but it's a calculated risk. I've seen how hard you've all worked these past years, and I know you have what it takes to succeed. If you feel this is the right step, I will be here to support you." Victoria's words filled the three young people with a mixture of relief and responsibility. Knowing they had her support gave them the confidence they needed to move forward, but they also felt the weight of not letting her down. A few days later, with the paperwork in order and the initial talks with the bank completed, they finally secured the loan. It wasn't a large amount, but coupled with their savings, it was enough to rent a small space on the outskirts of town and purchase a used printing press, old but functional. And so, little by little, they began to build the walls of their dream. The first few months were difficult. The printing press didn't always cooperate, and the long hours left them exhausted. There were nights when Lily stayed at the workshop until the early hours, reviewing orders and ensuring everything was in place for the following morning. Ivan took care of the deliveries, cycling to neighboring villages, while Isidro, with his eye for detail, handled the accounts and finances. Despite these initial hurdles, they never lost sight of their goal. Each small victory, a new subscription, a positive customer review, brought them one step closer to the stability they sought. They knew the road wouldn't be easy, but together they had overcome bigger obstacles before. Now they were building something of their own, something that would change not only their lives, but the lives of those around them. Over time, the small printing press began to gain a reputation in the town and beyond. The quality of their work, coupled with their dedication, earned them loyal customers. The business grew slowly but steadily, and so, step by step, Lily, Ivan, and Isidro became an example of perseverance and success for the community that had once seen them as just children selling newspapers on the streets. The years passed quickly, and what had once been a small dream shared between Lily, Ivan, and Isidro was now a solid reality. The printing press had gained recognition not only in their town, but also in neighboring communities. Lily, at 25, had become a strong and determined woman, always ready to face new challenges. Ivan, now 21, and Isidro, a couple of years older, were in charge of the day-to-day running of the business, while Lily focused on strategic decisions. Victoria, who was beginning to feel her age, remained a maternal figure and advisor to the three, watching with pride as the young people she had taken in blossomed into successful entrepreneurs. One day, everything changed unexpectedly. As Lily reviewed some documents in her office, a disquieting piece of news reached her ears. Her mother, Emily, had returned to town. Word of her arrival spread quickly through the community. Some commented that Emily looked worn down, aged by years of hardship and bad decisions. Others whispered that she was seeking redemption, hoping to reconnect with the children she had left behind. But what none of them knew was how that encounter would unfold between a mother who had abandoned her home and the children who, in her absence, had learned to survive on their own. The first time Lily saw her, the world seemed to stop. Emily stood there at the entrance to the printing press, her face etched with guilt and years of neglect. Ivan, seeing her, felt a lump form in his throat. Both siblings stood frozen, facing the woman who had given them life, but who had also robbed them of their childhood. Emily, her voice trembling, tried to break the silence. "Children, I know I was wrong to leave you, but I have suffered, and I have paid for my mistakes. I want to make things right." Her words hung in the air, but found no echo in Lily's heart. The anger she had held at bay for years, the pain of having been abandoned at her most vulnerable, everything she had tried to bury, resurfaced with a vengeance. "It's not that easy, Mama," Lily said, her voice colder than she would have imagined. "You can't just come back as if nothing happened. You weren't there when we needed you most. You left us alone." Ivan, who had remained silent, finally spoke, his voice low but full of bitterness. "I waited for you for so long. I thought that one day you would come back. But you didn't. Now, everything we achieved without you." Emily, tears in her eyes, tried to approach them, but Lily took a step back, raising a hand to stop her. "Don't make excuses. We all suffered, but suffering doesn't justify abandonment. We cried for you. We missed you. But we learned that not every mistake deserves to be forgiven." The tension in the room became unbearable. Ivan looked at his sister, feeling the same internal conflict. He knew that a part of him still wanted to forgive, still loved the woman who had brought him into the world, but the wound was too deep. The final blow came when Emily, desperate to find some connection with them, mentioned the land on which the printing press stood. "This place, this land belongs to me. I don't know how you managed to do what you did, but it's still my property." Lily felt her anger turn to ice. "This land doesn't belong to you anymore, Mama. Victoria took care of that. She gave us the home you denied us." Defeated by these words, Emily lowered her gaze. She tried to find something else to say, something to justify her actions. But she knew the truth was inescapable. She had lost her children long before she returned, and now reality hit her with a brutal force she couldn't avoid. In a broken voice, she murmured, "I just wanted to be your mother again." Lily, her heart hardened by years of abandonment, replied with a firmness that left no room for doubt. "You don't have that right anymore. Victoria was more of a mother to us than you ever were." Emily left the printing press with the weight of guilt heavy on her shoulders. Those who saw her leave noticed her devastated expression, as if a part of her had died in that moment. Rumors of the confrontation spread quickly, but no one truly knew what had transpired inside the printing press. That night, in the quiet of their home, Lily and Ivan couldn't shake a mixture of emotions. Although they had rejected their mother, a part of them still ached. Resentment did not fade with words, but neither did the love they had once felt for her. Victoria, as always, was there to offer comfort. "You don't have to feel guilty," she told them gently. "Forgiveness is a gift you choose to give or not, and no one can force you to do so if you're not ready." The years continued to turn, and with them, the lives of Lily, Ivan, and Isidro grew brighter. The business, which had begun as a small printing press, slowly transformed into an enterprise that served not only their town, but also neighboring communities. The printing press, now a solid company, stood as a symbol of hard work, perseverance, and dedication. Lily, with her keen business acumen, steered the ship with the same dedication she had shown since her days selling newspapers. Ivan and Isidro, always by her side, complemented her leadership with flawless execution, together building a vision that went far beyond what they had ever imagined. Their success wasn't instant, nor was it easy. There were moments when the burden seemed unbearable, when the accounts didn't add up, and the market seemed stagnant. But, as always, they faced adversity together, with the firm conviction that if they had survived abandonment and poverty, they could weather any storm life threw their way. Each obstacle overcome reinforced their determination, and, little by little, the fruits of their labor began to blossom. The company grew so much that they were able to open branches in other towns, generating employment and opportunities for many. The community looked up to them as a prime example of what perseverance could achieve. Lily, Ivan, and Isidro became pillars of their community. Their success measured not only in economic terms, but also in the respect and admiration their neighbors held for them. To thank Victoria, the woman who never gave up on them, the three siblings decided to give her a special gift. Together, they built her a new home, a house that reflected everything Victoria had been to them, a haven of love, warmth, and security. When they showed it to her for the first time, Victoria, moved to tears, couldn't believe what her children of the heart had done for her. The house, simple but cozy, was filled with details that spoke of their affection for her. "This is your home, Victoria," Lily said, her voice thick with emotion. "Here you can rest and enjoy everything you deserve after so many years of caring for us and guiding us." Victoria, her eyes shining with gratitude, looked at them all with a mixture of pride and joy. "I didn't need anything more than to see you all happy," she said, but she accepted the gift with a heart overflowing with love. For her, beyond the material comforts, the most valuable thing was to see that the children she had taken in had grown into strong, kind adults. The story of their success spread beyond their town, inspiring other families, other young people also facing adversity. Lily, Ivan, and Isidro never forgot where they came from. They knew their roots lay in the humble soil of hard work and sacrifice, and they made sure that every step they took was imbued with gratitude and respect for those who had helped them along the way. As their business flourished, so did the memories. Often, on quiet evenings, they would sit together, reminiscing about the early days. They remembered how it had all started with a $10 bill found on the street, and how, from that small glimmer of hope, they had built an empire. Lily often said that it wasn't the money that had saved them, but the belief that they could change their destiny, a belief that Victoria had instilled in them from the day she welcomed them into her home. But life, always in motion, also brought goodbyes. Victoria, with the passage of years, began to weaken. Her hair, once vibrant, was now a pure white, and her hands, which had worked so hard, began to tremble. She knew her time was drawing near, and though it pained her to leave those she considered her children, she was at peace. She had fulfilled her mission. She had seen them grow, prosper, and form a family that transcended blood ties. The day Victoria passed away, she was surrounded by love. Lily and Ivan, along with Isidro, were by her side until her final breath, holding her hands and thanking her once again for being the mother they never stopped needing. The funeral was simple, but filled with respect and affection. The entire town attended, honoring the woman who had left an indelible mark on the lives of so many. Lily, with tears in her eyes, gave a short speech in her memory. "Victoria was more than a mother to us," she said, her voice breaking. "She taught us the true meaning of unconditional love, kindness, and sacrifice. We can never repay her for all she gave us, but her legacy will live on in us and in all that we do." With hearts full of sadness, but also gratitude, the siblings understood that Victoria's true legacy wasn't in the house they had built for her, or in the possessions she had left behind. Her legacy was the strength she had instilled in them, the capacity to love, to fight, and to keep moving forward, no matter how difficult the path. The story of Lily, Ivan, and Isidro not only inspired those who knew them, but it resonated in the hearts of new generations. And so, the name of Victoria lived on, not only in the memories of her children of the heart, but in the hearts of all who understood that family is not always born of blood, but of love and choice. If you found this story as heartwarming as we did, please like and comment to let us know how you feel. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other meaningful stories.